You might be surprised to learn that an extended Broadway audition for a lead role in a musical was able to turn into a reality competition show. But to your surprise, I ask you, what? Like it's hard? This is the Recap Episode, a weekly podcast about exploring and analyzing reality TV, season by season. I'm your host, Walker, and I use my social science background to investigate reality TV shows. I uncover what they have to say about their casts, as well as the experiences of the people who made these shows themselves and participated in them. This week, I'm covering Legally Blonde, the musical, The Search for Elle Woods, a 2008 MTV talent search competition built around casting a new lead for Legally Blonde, the musical. Before I get into talking about the history, recapping, and my analysis of this show, I just want to first tell you that you can watch the whole series on YouTube. I'll put a link in the episode notes / description. All the episodes are there, along with a few other clips of full performances and auditions when they are available. There's also an incredible oral history that documents not only what happened in the show from the perspectives of the contestants who participated and some of the producers and judges, but also talks a little bit about the setup and the creation of the show. That is available on playbill.com, and I will put that link in the description as well. So, Legally Blonde, the musical, premiered first in San Francisco before coming to Broadway in April 2007. It was directed and choreographed by Jerry Mitchell, who was previously known for Jekyll and Hyde, 1994 revival of Grease, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown's 1999 revival, a 2000 revival of The Rocky Horror Show, 2002's Broadway Hairspray, a 2003 revival of Gypsy, Never Gonna Dance 2003, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels in 2005 as well. And later he would become really well known for Kinky Boots, which he directed and choreographed, and that also earned him 2 Tony nominations and 1 win. Legally Blonde the musical, when it was produced and then put on, was recorded in September 2007 and shown on MTV in October that year to a pretty good success. And it was a really good example of taking, a Broadway performance, which is typically a very inaccessible thing for broad audiences, and putting it on television, making it available to magnitudes more people in the process. Laura Bell Bundy is the actress who was playing the lead role of Elle Woods, who originated it. She decided in January 2008 that July of that year would be when she steps down from the role. So, they needed to find a new Elle Woods. MTV, after seeing the success of the musical itself, had some simultaneous questioning and ideas and brainstorming, saying, well, can we make a show out of finding someone new to be the lead? In 2007, there was a show on NBC called Grease, You're the One That I Want, which had aired roughly the previous year, in which the lead roles for Grease the musical were found via reality competition. That show was also based off of a format pioneered in Andrew Lloyd Webber's talent competition show, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria, from 2006, which was trying to cast someone into the role of Maria from The Sound of Music. So, the producers at MTV had seen this idea done before, but of course they wanted to put their own spin on it and try to do it even better and way more engaging and entertaining. This show needed to have a bit more of the MTV flavor, such as the contestants living together to try to get some drama from that interaction. There would be, high amounts of editing, a little bit of produced drama from live footage and confessionals, and then of course MTV would also put its own reality ingredients into the soup. By this point, MTV was fairly experienced in producing and editing and making their own particular flavor of reality TV. They've had Real World for quite a while at this point, and then what spun off of that as well, Road Rules and The Challenge. There was also shows like The Osbournes, Laguna Beach, and its spin-off The Hills. By this point, they'd even had A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila 1 and 2, and right before Legally Blonde the musical The Search for Elle Woods would air, A Double Shot at Love, the 2008 show, had also aired. So MTV had a pretty good sense of what to do and how to make this happen. So specifically, MTV brought together Amanda Lipitz and Adam Paul as our 2 executive producers and showrunners to pull together and create a reality competition show to find a new lead for the musical. However, the ultimate decision would still rest in Jerry Mitchell's hands. And so we get a reality competition like you would expect, but it also kind of has to respect and obey and ultimately follow the orders from the Broadway side. Because if the ultimate prize for the show is truly going to be starring in the lead role of a Broadway musical, then they need to make sure they really got the right person and not someone who just delivered good reality competition television. So, when you're watching the show, you'll see what you expect. A mix of documentary-style footage, in-the-moment confessionals, and also chair confessionals, by which I mean talking to the contestants at a later date to have them revisit and talk about what they've already experienced outside of being in the moment. The cast all lives together during the filming of the show. In this case, they live in the Empire Hotel after the first episode, and we get kind of a 3-act episode. First challenge that'll grant an advantage, a second challenge, and then the elimination process, which is, of course, for the most drama and intensity, drawn out into the last 10-15 minutes of the episode. So, the show aired 8 episodes between June 2nd and July 23rd of 2008. I learned along the way that filming was done mostly in the winter. It started in late February 2008. So if you choose to go watch this show, you will see all the women bundled up when they're outside and just not going outside as much as often, which kind of sucks because the hotel they're at had a nice balcony and they literally only used it the night they moved into the hotel. It's so cold in New York. Everything's in New York, of course. We're shown many locations around where they go and do their rehearsals, where they go and do their auditions, which is the main challenge in every episode. So, episode 1, we are told thousands of women responded to an open casting call to audition in what the show is calling the Ultimate Broadway Boot Camp. We're greeted by our host, Haley Duff, who is Hilary Duff's older sister. While Haley is not Hilary, she has many of her own acting accolades, including TV and film. Most notably, she was also in Lizzie McGuire, and she had the main role of Sandy in Seventh Heaven. The thing that is most commonly told to us during this show that they attribute her to her is her recent performance in 2006's Hairspray as Amber Von Tussle. Haley is here to greet us and to explain a little bit of her background and kind of guide us through the show. She is, of course, the host, and she also serves as a mentor to the ladies who are participating in the show and are competing in this extended audition to become Elle Woods. It's 8 a.m., and there are 50 women dancing on a stage. Suddenly, Jerry Mitchell, the legendary director, appears. Some of the ladies tell us that he's like God to them. The ladies are performing some steps that were taught to them by Dennis Jones, the associate choreographer for Legally Blonde the musical. Progressively, the 50 women are eliminated down to 15 through this dance audition. They keep dancing, they keep doing the steps, and Jerry's in the audience, in the seats, basically saying, you're out, until they get down to 15. During this time, some of the women get to talk to the cameras about their hopes, their expectations, their dreams, and then when they're eliminated, their goals being crushed by being cut. Then, after this, Haley Duff is finally brought in to actually meet these top 15. She explains that she is their mentor for the remainder of the competition. Now it's 10:45 a.m., and Haley has to tell these 15 that by the end of the day, 5 more will be eliminated. They're only bringing 10 women into the actual rest of the show. So up next for them is a proper singing audition. It's 11 a.m., and vocal coach Seth Rudetsky is there to teach these top 15 the song So Much Better from Legally Blonde. It's a really powerful song, and one that can kind of take the breath out of you. It's what Elle performs at the very end of Act 1. If you've never seen Legally Blonde, you should fix that. It's a great movie starring Reese Witherspoon. And at the end of Act 1, and what the song connects to, is when Elle thinks that she is not good enough, that going to Harvard Law just to chase after her recently ex-boyfriend Warner to try to get him to stay with her is a horrible idea, and that she's made a fool of herself and put herself in a horrible position. But then the tables turn when she's granted a spot for a coveted law internship, leading her into her success in the second half of the movie. And same thing for the stage musical. This song is when Elle finds out that she got that coveted internship position, and it's a nice, like, great cap off to Act 1 of the musical. We observe the ladies practicing and Seth giving them advice for both singing and getting started on Broadway. After this, it's now time to learn more choreography with Dennis. I believe, if I'm correct, they are performing the Bend and Snap dance from Bend and Snap, one of the songs in the second act of the musical. After this, it is time for not only the 15 ladies who are competing for these final 10 spots, but also us, the viewers, to meet our judges for this audition and the rest of the show. We are introduced to Bernie Telsey, casting director on Broadway. The auditions are held at the Telsey casting offices, so there's some of his involvement there. Heather Hack is one of the writers of Legally Blonde the musical, as well as many other projects. And then Paul Cannon, he's a Broadway actor with a respectable resume, and at this time he was currently in Legally Blonde the musical. The judges we are told that they are looking for someone who can sing, act, and dance the role, but also someone who stands out among the others. And what will also be kind of leaned onto for later judging decisions as we move through the show, they're also looking for someone who embodies Elle Woods, the character, and who they really can, like, see on stage as Elle Woods, on top of actual talent and skill on display. Jerry Mitchell shows back up. Again, he's the director. He does get the final call at the end, but he leaves the decisions until the end to these three judges. I found out later that this is because he was actually on contract with Bravo at the same time that this is filming for a different show, which I love to cover, called Step It Up and Dance. It was a one-season dancing competition show, which I'm so excited to get into that at some point in the near future. So, these top 15, first they dance in groups of 5 to perform for the judges. They do the Bend and Snap choreography. There are some comments from the judges while they watch these 5 little heats about the dancing getting worse as they go on, which is interesting. And then at the end of all that, Bernie comments to the other judges that, this will be difficult because the girls who didn't like the dancing are probably going to be the ones who sing the best. After this, all of the ladies, one by one, go out to perform. So much better. This is about 3 p.m. Keep in mind we started this single whole day of action and progressive auditions at 8 a.m. And that's when we got there, so who knows when the ladies actually got there to start doing all this. As the ladies perform, we get to hear some of the judges' comments, both positive and negative, and then when they're all done, we get a little bit of the deliberations. Bernie and Paul are both talking about singing, dancing, acting, performing talent of the current 15 ladies, but Heather is leaning more into discussing the qualities the ladies have that do or don't fit with the character of Elle Woods, which I will say just briefly, to me is very interesting. In a musical such as Legally Blonde, there's not a lot of room for interpretation from the actor or the director for how they want to characterize and interpret and play this lead role. Not as much as you could introduce into a different type of musical. So, you can definitely tell now and throughout the rest of the series that, again, the judges, as much as they're looking at the actual raw talent and the ability, they are really putting a lot of weight into, like, well, does this woman, like, fit our idea of Elle Woods? Can she become the character of Elle Woods specifically? It is now 8:30 p.m., and we're finally going to start learning about who the 10 cast members are for the rest of the show. This whole thing is drawn out for so long in the episode to, like, build dramatic tension and get everyone on the edge of their seat about who's going to move on. Not just the audience, but also the ladies themselves who are in the show. So Haley reads off from essentially the cast list, a paper, very similar to the same one that Elle reads her name off of when she gets the internship, of who is going to be moving on into the competition. And we get through the first 5 that are all selected to go forward. Then we have a very dramatic pause. We get the 6th one, and then we finally get to the first woman who is cut. This whole time they've been kind of like saying someone's name, like, Autumn, step forward, and then they're like, congrats, you're moving on into the competition, and all this. And then they pull, like, the first one who gets sent home, her name was Chloe. They're like, Chloe, step forward. I'm sorry, we don't see you as Elle Woods, So then they, like, repeat this with, like, the next person saved, then the next one that's cut, then the one after that is saved again, until they get down to the bottom 3, and then there's, like, another big pause. But at this point, only 2 of those 3 can stay, which means 1 will be cut. So then they deliver the 9th person who's moving into the competition, and another big, long, dramatic pause, and then it's finally revealed out of those bottom 2 who is cut and who gets to stay. And then finally, remember, keep in mind, I just said that this started at 8:30. At 10:10, finally, a limousine is here to pick up the 10 finalists, take them to Times Square, where they briefly meet with Jerry Mitchell and Lara Bell Bundy very quickly, and then they're sent off to their hotel, where they'll be staying for the rest of their time on the show. Also, just pointing out here in my notes, this is an MTV show. They have some pretty good music selections throughout when you just need music to fill space and put in the background. They did constantly play Bowling for Soup's 1985 throughout this episode. I'm not really sure why. Moving into episode 2, we first get a previously on Legally Blonde, the musical, The Search for Elle Woods, just to recap the whole entire first audition episode. Then we actually get a real intro. One where all of the top 10 ladies who are in the rest of the competition are shown one by one, like a picture. We get their names. Bruiser, which is Elle Woods' dog in the movie, which is a little chihuahua, is like running around the screen during all this time. And there's some, nice peppy music played in the background that I could not figure out what the actual song was. This one feels like more like a real first episode. But I can definitely see that MTV was sort of partially going for kind of like what American Idol does, where their like first 2 episodes of a season are a recap of the auditions process around the country, highlighting standouts for both talent and sad story and comedy. And then we're actually now into the like competition proper, which means we do actually get proper intros to all of our main cast, many of whom, actually I think all of who, we had seen some confessionals from in the first episode. So I'm just going to read through them real quickly in alphabetical order. Many of these women went on to have careers in Broadway, and a handful of them had plenty of experience before this show. So we have Selena Carvajal, who would later go by Lena Hall, 28, from San Francisco. Bailey Hanks, 20, from Anderson, South Carolina. Rhiannon Hansen, 19, from Logan, Utah. Autumn Hurlbert, 28, from Mesa, Arizona. Natalie Lander, 25, from Malibu. Cassie Okenka, 22, from Toledo, Ohio. Lindsay Ridgway, 24, from Chicago. Cassie Silva, 19, from LA. Emma Zacks, 26, from the Bronx. And Lauren Zarkin, 18, from Rochester, Michigan. So you have 10 of them. I'm just going to use their first names. And then Cassie S versus Cassie O for the 2 Cassies. This is a good crew. They all have pretty good standout personalities. And at least in the way that they are edited and produced on the show, the editors do give us things to latch on to help us differentiate them all and quickly learn who they are, their names, their look, and how they act and perform. So the ladies then arrive at their accommodations for the first time at the start of this episode. Again, the Empire Hotel. They get in up to this, they call it a loft. I found out later that it was like kind of a suite style thing that they do like weddings in. Like it's got this big bar in it that none of them used because they're performers and they don't want to like get too crazy. Also, 4 of them weren't technically of age yet. And it's got, all these like twin beds just sort of arranged around the place. It's very, we took this space and retrofitted it for a reality competition show. Curtain walls, because of course like production and camera and sound are behind said walls, all these things. But it's all pink. It's a teen girl dream. It's decorated by Pottery Barn Teen. While they're here, the ladies try to do a toast to these top 10, which comedically ends in one of them getting soaked because they toast wrong. We can see here that they got given some Legally Blonde merch. Some pink jackets that say Legally Blonde on the front, and some black caps with pink lettering that again, also say Legally Blonde. MTV and the people who were putting on the production of Legally Blonde had the like advertising and merch on lock. This show did a great job of serving as an advertisement for the musical. And I'll get into a little bit of that later. Haley Duff shows up to tell us about how tough things are about to get and how they'll experience a series of auditions that no one on Broadway has ever experienced. Next, it's time for another reality competition staple, a note of information for their upcoming challenge or audition. Here it is called the call sheet, because of course it is. This call sheet tells them to dress comfortably. It also tells them where to go and when to get there. On that note, it does at least appear that the ladies are left to their own devices to get ready and get to the location on time. They take taxis. We do see them do that. And at one point, I think we see like a production car. It's hard to tell if production made sure everyone got to where they needed to be on time, or if that was a piece left up to the cast to figure it out. But no one was ever like late. So it's interesting that it was like sometimes mentioned about, being on time and being punctual, but there was never a problem. Just something to mention. This first event they go to is their very first workshop. Each episode, like I said, we have this 3-act structure where it's a challenge, a bigger challenge, and then the elimination proceedings. To put a little more detail on that, the first thing they do in each episode is a workshop where they will practice something, rehearse something, try to develop one of the important abilities for being Elle Woods in Legally Blonde the musical. The sort of best performer or best participant in the workshop, as usually is selected by the person running said workshop, gets an advantage. And then afterwards, all the ladies are informed of their bigger challenge that they'll be doing for the second half of the episode. Sometimes it's in the same day, other times it's in a different day. And these bigger challenges, they call them auditions, because they are, where they're usually performing one of the numbers from the musical, at least singing, if not also doing acting and dancing simultaneously. For this first workshop, the ladies meet Mark Bruni, the associate director for Legally Blonde the musical. He's here to guide them through some acting exercises and deliver some critiques and advice while watching them do line reads with Nicholas, one of the actors who plays Emmett, which is Elle Woods' new love interest that she meets at Harvard. During this acting workshop, we do get a little bit of a peek at a potential storyline for Bailey. Bailey is from South Carolina, and she has a fairly thick Southern accent. And Mark calls her out on that a little bit, mostly just to say, don't let us hear too much of the accent. At the end of the workshop, Haley Duff returns with a stack of something that's bound and in pink, and she also reveals the advantage, or the prize, for being the best in the workshop. Mark gets to choose since he ran the thing, and he does actually choose Bailey for being very effective in talking and listening, making clear choices in the scene, and delivering a standout vocal performance. Bailey gets to choose someone to come with her to share in the advantage, and she chooses Lindsay. And the advantage they get is they get to hang out and meet Nikki Snelson, who currently plays Brooke in Legally Blonde the musical. Haley then tells all of the ladies that their later challenge, the audition for this episode, will be performing a scene with Nikki Snelson. Haley is here to deliver the scripts and the music. That's what the mystery pink bundles were earlier. And we find out that specifically the ladies will be performing the scene from Act 2 where Brooke and Elle share that they are Delta Nu sisters with each other, the sorority that Elle is president of at the start of the movie and the musical. Later, back at the house, we get to spy in on dinner time with the ladies. They're beginning to feel the pressure of the competition format. Lauren talks a little bit about being so nervous and having so many emotions that she's struggling to just share anything at all. And Emma, who's one of the more experienced in the group, is talking about how now that they're the 10 finalists, it's a lot closer in skill set than an audition with 200 people, which is going to make everything a little more difficult. The next morning, we see some quick confessionals before the ladies head off for their audition. Cassie says she really wants to not be the first one sent home because she just wants this so bad. And Natalie is freaking out so much that she is to the point of tears when it comes to this upcoming audition. At the audition itself, of course, Bernie, Heather, and Paul are here to judge. Haley introduces everyone again for the ladies and for the audience's benefit. Nikki Snelson is also formally introduced to everyone. First, they do a segment of dialogue for the scene where Brooke confides in Elle, and Elle convinces her to share the alibi with her so they can go win the case. Before any of the ladies come out and do their lines with Nikki, Bernie instructs Nikki Snelson to forget one of her lines because they want to see how the ladies react to this. Now, listeners, this is where we start getting into the reality TV-ness of it all, because, of course, that's something that would never happen in an audition. If you're reading lines, then you have someone there who is serving the purpose of explicitly reading lines directly from the script to you, so that the people, the directors, the casting directors and such, can get a sense of your acting ability and your embodiment of the character. Now, yes, lines are forgotten in the middle of performances sometimes, and you have to improvise, but in an audition, this would not happen. And this puts everyone off guard. Only one person ends up doing this successfully, and it's not even really shown in the episode how well she does it. That's being Natalie. From what I found out later in my research, Natalie was the only one who sort of took it with stride and improvised pretty quickly. Everyone else was so caught off guard by Nikki just not delivering one of the lines they expect that they're not quite sure how to handle it. We get to see some of the ladies actually do the whole scene as written, or a majority of it, and others they just kind of speed through. More interestingly, they also just didn't show any of the ladies performing the song Delta knew from Act 2 at all. When the judges are deliberating, and while that's happening, back in the dressing room in the green room, the ladies are all complaining about the twist, which I thought was great. While the judges are deliberating and they go through each of them one by one, we do get little bits of snippets of the performance of the song. But it was really interesting to me that they just chose to show none of that from the actual audition part, or even like a supercut or anything. I thought that was a weird decision. When we get to results and figuring out how everyone did stacked up with each other, of course, Haley is here again with her list, and as she reads off the names she reads are all saved, guaranteed a spot in the next round, the next episode. Anyone who is not called is the bottoms of the week. They must go to the casting office to face the judges for the final decision and elimination. So and usually the first person read is kind of like the most outstanding performer, like the winner, you could say. Which in this episode ends up being Bailey. So not only did she ace this audition and get called first, she also won the workshop earlier. So a great head start in the competition for Bailey. In order after her were Lauren, Emma, Natalie, Rhiannon, Autumn, and Selena, which puts Lindsay and both of the Cassies in the bottom. At the casting office, Paul opens up and says this is a difficult and unique process. Often actors don't get a job, and they'll never hear why. But in this case, these ladies do get to hear why. When it comes to Lindsay, Bernie said that she had a perfect Elle Woods when she walks into the room, but now she's not holding up to all the other girls who can deliver the exact same. And Heather tells her she needs to deliver the sparkle and the pop of Elle. For Cassie S., Bernie says she has the tools and the skills, but that will only take her so far. Paul wants to see more vulnerability and soul, but there's also too much Cassie S. coming through. She needs to find that balance. For Cassie O. from Ohio, she needs to work off of the other actors more. She has a great voice, but the actor for Elle Woods needs to take things higher, needs to be bolder. Ultimately, Lindsay is first declared safe, and then out of the two Cassies, S is saved, and Cassie Okenko from Ohio is sent home. In a post-elimination confessional, she was saying that the judges said how they saw Elle is not how they saw her, and that's okay. And she's really going to miss the girls. Last thing for this episode 2, they played... what's that Nickelback song? I think it's It's either Nickelback or Daughtry, the one where it's I'm going home to the place where I belong. Yeah, it's Daughtry. Home. They played that over Cassie, being eliminated and leaving the hotel and everything. Which, again, I get it's MTV. They're going to shove, relevant music into it when they can. But that just felt a little too cheesy for me, I'm just going to say. In episode 3, the first thing we get is the Saved Girls, Cassie S. and Lindsay, giving some confessionals, and then the other ladies are talking about Cassie O being eliminated. In confessional, Bailey says, shocker, Cassie S. made it. I don't think she had any qualities of Elle Woods, but that's all I'm going to say. There's a whole bunch of stuff about this show and the experiences of the ladies who participated in it out online, including not only the oral history and many other videos, but also a whole reunion they did in 2020 during COVID lockdowns, which is like a 2-hour thing up on YouTube. And it seems like all the ladies really got along and really liked each other. But in trying to make, entertaining and engaging reality TV with stakes and drama and tension and conflict and conflama, the editors really went the route of, well, you said it at one point, so we can, Frankenbite it together to make the story we want. So that happens quite a bit to these women in their confessionals, where they're like, wait, did I even say that? And it's, yeah, you did at some point. You just may not have said it where you thought you were saying it. And so, in reality, Bailey really liked Cassie S., who got to stay. But Cassie S. got made out to be kind of immature throughout her time on the show, and so this is just another piece that they can use to kind of build up that the other ladies don't like her, so they'd be happy to see her be eliminated and for her to struggle. Anyway, the call sheet for this episode tells them again to dress casually and comfortably and to meet at a fitness studio. They walk into said fitness studio to see 9 bikes and also Seth Rudetsky, their vocal coach. Today's workshop focuses on endurance and stamina. Before they start, however, Haley does remind them all again about receiving an advantage after the workshop is over. Seth has them go through jumping jacks, crunches, and then finally puts them on the bikes for essentially a spin class, and this whole time they're singing, warming up, and belting out tunes from Legally Blonde the musical. Seth makes them all perform on their own during the exercises, so we get to see a few who nail it incredibly, including Emma and Autumn. When he gets to Cassie S., she does do well, but the editing for the show tries to make it seem like she's off-key and not harmonizing well, or singing the part properly, while, again, biking and having been biking for the past, hour and a half or whatnot. Emma here, and she's mentioned this a few times in the last 2 episodes, and I haven't brought it up yet, had quit smoking 2 weeks prior to joining the show and being in this competition, and so her body is still, reacting and recovering from that. And so she's coughing a lot, she's dealing with the kind of healing process of suddenly dropping smoking, and of course, then being on a bike for almost 2 hours, that's going to hit you a bit. But it seems like she's been doing pretty well. After this class, Seth shouts out Selena, Emma, and Lauren as the best participants in the class, and he chooses Lauren as the top one to receive the advantage prize. And Lauren selects Cassie to go with her. She says because she busted her butt when she knew she needed to after being in the bottom the previous week, to which Cassie is thankful, but not so much that it was a charity pick. The prize is a mani-pedi and hanging out with actress, performer Orphe. She was playing Paulette in Legally Blonde the musical during its first run. And Haley also tells the ladies that their next audition performance will be to the opening number of the musical, Omigod, you guys. While hanging out with Orphe, she asks Lauren and Cassie if everyone in the house is getting along. Lauren goes, yeah, there's no issues, and Cassie in confessional thinks that this is a stupid question, and also that's a stupid response. Back at the hotel with the ladies talking and waiting for Lauren and Cassie to return, Bailey, out loud and in confessional, thinks that Emma should have received the win in the workshop, but Emma herself says she wouldn't really want that because the prize wasn't really that much of an advantage. Going to get a mani-pedi, she's like, I'd rather just be at home resting. The next morning, their call sheet says it's to arrive at 9 a.m. and it's 8 a.m. There's a little bit of chaos erupting as the ladies attempt to all get ready in time, although Cassie S. only has a 5-minute routine, so she's good to go. Of course, everyone gets there at 8:55. None of them were late. Dennis is here, the choreographer. He gives them the info on their performance. When they're not performing as Elle in the scene, the ladies will be performing as one of the Delta Nu sorority girls who are on stage singing, dancing, and supporting Elle. Which means that not only do they have to learn the Elle part, they have to learn so many different variations of doing the scene and making sure they know who they are within all the choreography. There's a little bit of a struggle with learning the words, learning the steps for some of the ladies, and Dennis points out that some of the girls were very focused when learning Elle's parts, but then not so much when practicing the Delta Nu's parts, which Seth also calls them out on a little bit. Back at the hotel in between this and the next day for the audition, Bailey isn't feeling that well. She's feeling a little under the weather and starts to lose her voice, so she decides to rest so that she can actually perform well later at the audition. Cassie starts to get annoyed about this. The next day, Bailey is then annoyed with Cassie's behavior, and Lindsay even wants Cassie to go home because she thinks that Cassie has a lot of growing up to do. Cassie is being portrayed as this kind of immature. The best comparison that I can give you is Rachel Berry in Glee. Unfortunately. Audition time for this episode, we get a reintroduction to the judges, and the women deliver the scene. It has pieces of acting, as well as the rest of the singing and dancing that goes along with sort of the back half of the Oh My God, You Guys number. We move through all of the women performing, and focusing on them. Of course, everyone's on stage because, again, they're doing the backup parts when they're not doing Elle's part. When we get to Cassie, and everyone's getting, advice and whatnot, or we're hearing some of the judges' comments. When we get to Cassie, Bernie Telsey asks her if she feels like she should be the one going home. And she says no. There are other girls who I would say should go home. And Bernie goes, okay, well, who? Cassie does the right thing, and she doesn't say who she thinks she should go home, just that she's frustrated about the other girls and their performance and their commitment, especially in regards to how much they were practicing yesterday. This audition results with Autumn being the best performer, the first one called. Haven't talked about her much. She has, I believe, the most experience at this moment in time out of all the ladies in the competition of actually being on Broadway and performing. So she's one of our others to kind of be on the lookout for, who was kind of a standout from the beginning. Bailey, Natalie, Rhiannon, Selena, and Cassie S. are the other ones to be saved. Emma is mortified that Cassie was saved over her, and Bailey is surprised that Cassie was saved. Which means our bottoms are Emma, Lauren, Selena, and Lindsay, a bottom 4. So, Emma is told that she's talented, but there's a harshness that seems to be her main driving force, and they want more vulnerability. For Lauren, the judges told her that it wasn't a strong vocal performance, and that her energy is kind of off, and it seems like she doesn't want to be here. Lauren is the youngest in the competition, and she routinely will get, through her time in the competition, these remarks and comments about her maturity level and her experience. For Lindsay, the judges said that they're just not seeing what they need to see, although Heather does admit that Lindsay is, aesthetically Elle Woods, but talent-wise, it's just not there. And then Selena, she has the presence, but is it Elle Woods' presence, or is it just good stage perform presence? And Paul calls her out a little bit on the sexuality in her performance that she had, specifically saying they're looking for Elle Woods, not the next Pussycat doll. Paul goes on the records of saying this is one of the wildest things he's ever said, but he thinks it's hilarious in retrospect. Emma and Selena are saved, and then it comes down to Lindsay and Lauren. They save Lauren. Lindsay is cut. Post-elimination, Lindsay says in confessional that her dreams have been shattered, and she let her nerves get the best of her. Episode 4, again, as we start, we are coming right off of the last elimination. While the saved ladies wait, Rhiannon tells us that the ladies usually sit in the living room and wait for the saved ones to return. During this time, they chat, and they all agreed that Emma should definitely not go home. Then we get Emma's confessional. She was mortified to be in the bottom 4, and this has kind of wrecked her confidence. As they come back in, one of the ladies starts to ask if they got any good constructive feedback, and they don't even get the sentence out before, I believe it's Emma, just says no. Selena is also still upset and offended about Cassie talking to the judges about the other ladies not supporting each other and basically throwing everyone else in the group under the bus. Selena and Autumn try to talk to Cassie about her comments, but now she's, of course, feeling ganged up on, and, like, everyone's trying to talk to her. Even Emma chimed in to just kind of be like, hey, this wasn't cool. Cassie tries to explain that she doesn't have a lot of female friends. She's not sure how to navigate this environment and setting. And the others try to just get through to her that she needs to be a team player. On Broadway, you have to work with others. Ladies get a call sheet the next day, told to bring a notebook and pen to the workshop at the rehearsal studio. It's time for dogs. Bill Berloni and his assistant Kylan are here. They are the animal trainers for Legally Blonde the musical, and they're here with 2 chihuahuas, Boo Boo and Teddy. Of course, Bruiser, Elle's sidekick, is a very important part of Elle's character. This workshop is different than others because afterwards, both of the dogs will spend the night with the ladies to bond, just like how Laura Bell Bundy regularly does with the dogs who play Bruiser currently. And Bill tells the ladies that he's looking for someone that the dog trusts as who will be the sort of winner of this workshop challenge thing. So, I will say at the start, seems like Lauren and Autumn are doing pretty well with the dogs, but Cassie is struggling. The very next morning, they all come back together, although technically Bill and Haley and Kylan come to the hotel apartment for this part to test everyone's bond with the dogs, basically by having them give the dogs commands and seeing how well the dogs follow them and trust them and pay attention to them. Everyone does pretty well, except we're shown Cassie. The dog kind of doesn't obey her that much. Bill picks Autumn as the one who is the most natural and needed the least basic corrections, and is thus the best at this workshop thing. The prize is continuing to hang out with the dogs, and also Richard Blake, who plays Warner in Legally Blonde the musical. Autumn gets to pick one of the other ladies to come with her, so she chooses Selena. And Cassie then starts complaining about the girls getting kind of cliquey and how she feels like the odd one out. They also learn about their audition that they will do next for their next challenge, performing part of the song Serious with Richard, which is a sort of duet between Warner and Elle at the very start of the show. It's where Elle gets dumped when she thinks she's going to be proposed to, and the whole reason is because Warner, as he states, he's going to law school and he needs a more serious girlfriend, a Jackie, not a Marilyn, if you will. When Autumn and Selena go hang out with Richard, he's got them flowers, he's got champagne, he's got chocolates. He trying to ask them how everything's going so far. The ladies are like, yeah, we're really stressed. This is a lot. This is really difficult. Richard's just like, wow, okay. Well, I'm a Broadway actor, so they're there mostly just to, like, get to know him. Next, all the ladies go to rehearsal with Dennis and Seth again, this time to learn the scene from Serious, where they're singing and Elle thinks she's getting proposed to, and then Warner breaks up with her. The ladies have to very skillfully hit the kind of emotional beat change here, from Elle thinking she's going to be proposed to being dumped, and then delivering the sort of high volume, high magnitude emotion that Elle Woods delivers in everything she does. Autumn feels confident about this. Emma is struggling still because of her smoking. Turns out she ends up like actually sick. She goes to the doctor after this scene and gets diagnosed with some bronchitis. And we had a very both terrifying but also then funny scene in here where while Bailey is practicing the lines and the scenes, Seth scares her by saying, hey, none of the judges wanted you back this week. And then there's this like long dramatic pause. Everyone's like, wait, did he just say that to her? And then he goes, no, I'm just kidding. Which everyone's like, that was mean. I'm sure Seth had a blast though, even if he won't admit it. It's audition day. It's time for them to actually do this scene. Autumn's really confident, and at this point I noted that we actually really haven't had much time this episode with Natalie or Rhiannon. They're kind of falling into the background right now because there's focus on Emma's sickness, Autumn and Bailey doing well, Cassie being kind of shunned by the group. We've got our storylines. We have our cast storylines, so sometimes if you're not standing out in these reality environments, you get shoved to the background. All the ladies perform one by one. We get to watch them do their scene, do some of the singing. There's good and bad, positive and negative, highs and lows. Results of the audition, however, despite not being a standout for the drama, Rhiannon is the first one called, sort of our winner for this. Then Emma, Lauren, Bailey, and Natalie, leaving our bottom three being Cassie, Selena, and Autumn. In the casting office for Cassie, Paul says that she would probably play a really good swinging understudy. And then now it's time for a Leah Michelle moment. Cassie's like, yeah, but I don't want to be an understudy. I want to be a Broadway star. Even though the judges are trying to get her to understand that would be a great opportunity to get some good experience. For Selena, there's too many subtle decisions. Heather says part of what Legally Blonde the musical is that it's always over the top. In both emotions, movement, character action, none of it should be subtle at all. And if you're playing that into your characterization of Elle Woods, you're not quite getting what everything is going on. You're not quite getting it. For Autumn, they tell her that she had no connection to her co-star Richard in the scene. And she tried a little bit to say that she had a bad day, but Paul's like, yeah, that's bullshit. Everyone has a bad day, and you don't tell anyone, and you don't let it impact your ability to perform. Selena is cut, and we think we're going to end the episode, but then we get a surprise. Another woman is going home tonight. The judges then decide to also send Cassie home. So Autumn is the only one saved. At the start of episode 5, of course, everyone is surprised to see that Autumn is the only one who returned from the casting office back to the hotel. And here's where I made a weird little observation. The casting office is in the studio casting building, the Telsey's office building. But the hotel is separate. So something I would love to know, just for my own interest, is does that mean the ladies who are saved, or even the ones who are eliminated because they had to go back and get their stuff, have to trek/taxi back to the hotel after each elimination? Just those little behind the scenes things that you're like, wait a minute. Anyway, we get our call sheet pretty soon after this at the start of the episode. It is time to go to a dance studio in Brooklyn. That's where I live, so go Brooklyn. Emma's still feeling sick today from her bronchitis, but she'll get through it, I'm sure. Nick Kenkel is here. He is a choreographer for Legally Blonde the musical, and he is a, quote, master of hip-hop dancing. Today, they're going to be dancing a bunch, which Autumn is a little nervous about in confessional. Nick tells them when Elle Woods walks into a room, everyone looks at her. So that's the energy that they need to be today. And all the ladies are kind of like, wow, Nick is the real deal. He is a brutal teacher. He's going through it. He expects them to keep up and make it happen. Emma, unfortunately, has to step aside a couple times during the workshop due to being sick. And when practice inside the building is over, they decide they then go outside in 4-inch pink go-go boots and dance the routine that they just learned on the cobblestone streets of Brooklyn. The point of this is to give them practice navigating around obstacles that will be present on the Broadway stage. Wires, various pieces of prop and set, tracks for movable sets, all these things, grates. The logic is there, but it's still very only on a reality TV show is this going to happen. This is where I first noticed that it was really, really cold out, and it was probably winter, when they filmed this, early March, because everyone is out in jackets and they are freezing and they're having to huddle together because they're so cold. Anyway, the prize for doing well in this workshop is getting to do a yoga session and a little chill hangout with actress Kate Shindle, who plays Vivian in Legally Blonde the musical at this moment in time. Natalie is selected as the winner. She's shocked herself that she was chosen. Nick chose her because she was consistent and had a pleasant attitude in her performance outside. And Natalie chooses Rhiannon to enjoy the prize with her. The ladies also then, of course, learn about their next audition, which will be the Shake Your Junk dance break from the song Positive. Natalie and Rhiannon go hang out with Kate. It's nothing super excited. She kind of just gives them the advice of staying positive and to remember that Elle, for being, a blonde, as in the movie and the musical, she was never actually dumb. She just had a different value system that separated her from others and made her priorities seem sometimes silly in the eyes of other people around her, particularly the men in her life. They have rehearsal for practicing the Shake Your Junk dance break for their audition later with Nick and Dennis, the two choreographers. The tricky thing here is that they all have to learn 6 different configurations so that they can all learn Elle's part, which is a struggle for all of them. It's like 6 slightly different versions of the same dance. Or I guess 5 different versions and 1 where you're the lead. We're shown Emma struggling here again. This is an Emma-heavy episode where she's just on the struggle bus the whole time. The ladies get another call sheet when they're spending time at the hotel. A surprise. The judges have been judging for the past 4 weeks, but now they want the ladies to judge each other. On the call sheet is a set of survey questions they want the ladies to answer. Things such as, who is the weakest singer or dancer or actor? Who would most likely sabotage another girl in this competition? Who should have already been sent home? And who's going to win this competition? This questionnaire gets the ladies very upset, to the point where one of them says that this is what makes the business sickening, which was honestly an iconic little soundbite. The ladies decide that this is absolutely not in the spirit of Elle Woods. And Autumn says if we're going to play the game, then we're going to play it our way. Let's be positive. So they change the questions, instead figuring out who's the most improved singer, who's the most competitive, who's the strongest actor, who's the most improved dancer, etc. And then they practice the dance to Fall Out Boy's Sugar We're Going Down, playing over it. Interesting choice there. All of the ladies feel, heading into this next audition, that they simply didn't have enough rehearsal time with Dennis and Nick, so they are nervous. Before the audition proceeds, Bernie says that Elle Woods needs to be a 10 in all 3 areas, dancing, acting, and singing. A triple threat, although that's actually a later episode's challenge. And they need to be a 10 in all these because whoever is playing Elle is doing all 3 at the same time constantly throughout the entire show. They have to do it all well and have the stamina to maintain the appropriate energy the entire performance. So, for this dance break, Emma is up first. Bernie thought she wasn't going to be able to get through it, and they're coming down hard on her being sick, even though she tried to say that in a real show she would call in her understudy at this point, but they're kind of not having it. For Bailey, Bernie says she did great. She reminded him that Elle Woods does need to be sexy. For Rhiannon, they saw a lot, but also not enough, and Paul said she was technically weak. For Lauren, Paul and Bernie said she did a great job, and she's kind of our underdog here. And for Autumn, Heather said that she had very low confidence today, and Autumn's like, yeah, I'm exhausted, I'm underprepared. And then Autumn runs off the stage. She's sick, she got food poisoning. Turns out from bad yogurt. So she sits out for the rest of the girls' performances, which really is just Natalie left. And I will say, the episode cut during Natalie's performance, the episode that I was watching on YouTube. Couldn't really figure out where to find the back last 10 minutes of episode 5. So all that I know later on is that Natalie, Bailey, Lauren, and Rhiannon are the ones who are saved, with, I guess, Natalie winning the audition, getting the first callback. Autumn and Emma are placed into the bottom, and then Emma is eliminated. At the start of episode 6, Autumn returns post-elimination. There's a little bit of drama and tension manufactured at the start of this episode. The next call sheet tells ladies to meet up at a salon, and the ladies are all predicting correctly that the brunettes are going blonde. Natalie and Autumn have darker hair. Natalie's brown. Autumn's kind of like a dark reddish brunette. They're going blonde. Actually, everyone's getting a makeover and becoming more Elle Woods-esque. They go to the salon. John Barrett, who's apparently this great salon owner, comes and does all their hair. The ladies, after the show, said that this was a harrowing experience, that John was wine drunk the whole time and made a bunch of mistakes, and they bleached Autumn's hair way too much and made it super duper thin and frail, to the point where later they ended up just putting her in a wig at some point. Some of the girls here are really, really thinking now that looking more like Elle Woods will really grant an advantage and put away the judges' comments about them not quite seeming like Elle. When you look the part, it is easier to sell that you deserve the part. Bailey gets to be our lady who freaks out the most about her makeover. This is played, a little bit for laugh, because you're like, girl, you got 2 inches cut off, you got some color, it's fine. But we find out that Bailey is really, really attached to her hair, and she just wasn't quite ready for this at this moment. Next, they actually do their workshop. They go to Soho Studios. Laura Bell Bundy is here. We haven't seen her in a moment. And of course, the ladies are completely awestruck. She's there to talk to the ladies about the philosophy of Elle. She says she's very positive, she always gives the benefit of the doubt, and she doesn't judge others for judging her. She uses this to then advise the ladies to not let their own egos take over. Now, the actual workshop here, and like the challenge they have to do, is a photo shoot. They're all in the same exact dress and shoes, but they get a choice of accessories, pose, and how they want to do the photo shoot. Basically, they're doing one for like the poster for the play, the musical. And the photographer here will select the one who looks the most Elle Woods-esque. At the end, the photographers choose Natalie as the winner. She characterized Elle really well in the photos, and she made some creative choices by standing on top of these like law books that normally Elle is holding in the promotional photos. These like big giant books. Natalie gets a lunch date at Chop Suey with current Emmett understudy Andy Carl, although they make a point to say that Bailey was the second choice that they would have selected, which apparently annoys Autumn a little bit. Autumn starts getting played here as like this jaded older member of the group. She is the oldest. She has quite a bit of like performing experience under her belt, and they start playing into this idea of her like these young ladies, they don't know what they're getting themselves into. They haven't worked as hard as I am. They start playing Autumn like that here. She's much more motherly, it turns out, but you know, they got to play up the drama and the conflict a little more. For the audition in this episode, the ladies are performing the ballad Legally Blonde. In the auditions, you know, we're getting into the top 5, so everyone's real talented here. When Autumn performs, Bernie is like, I'm getting chills, and she gets basically a standing ovation from the judges when she's done. For Bailey, Bernie says he felt let down a little bit, and Heather says there's not enough emotion. Paul also wants to see more emotion directly from the gut for Bailey. Natalie comes up, and Bernie says for the very first time, he's not feeling Elle Woods in her, and Heather says she's a bit too one note. Lauren had excellent vocal performance, but she was a little closed off on her emotional performance. And then for Rhiannon, there were some bad notes, and Bernie's starting to question her vocal ability. Overall disappointment in Bailey, and praise for Autumn. For the results, only 2 were saved, which means there's a bottom 3. Autumn got the first call and the save, making her kind of the winner, top placement, and then Lauren. So for our bottom 3, Bailey is told that she is the perfect package, but it might not be complete. Based on today's audition, she's lacking the emotion needed to carry her as Elle Woods. Paul gives her the advice to not hold back. Be Elle Woods, don't just show that you're Elle Woods. For Rhiannon, she has great uniqueness, but maybe she's not the leading lady yet. And then for Natalie, which this is her first time in the casting office, she has an incredible voice, but Heather was disappointed in that she couldn't really channel the connection to Elle Woods wanting to return to Malibu after trying to stick it out at Harvard, given that Natalie herself is from LA. I also noted here that Bernie sounded really tired by this and like disengaged during this elimination. They save Bailey, and they say the judges are hoping for special, not just good and great. And then they cut Natalie. Episode 7, we are at a top 4. When the ladies come back, we find out that both Autumn and Lauren wanted Rhiannon to go home over Natalie. And honestly, even Rhiannon is upset that Natalie only got 1 chance to be in the bottom, while Autumn and Lauren have both been in the bottom and sent to the casting office for elimination multiple times. The workshop for this episode, all the ladies head to Miss J's gym, and the focus for this episode is on being a true triple threat. They have to do more than just singing, acting, and dancing separately. They need to combine them all seamlessly. They're here with Rusty and Michelle, who are current Legally Blonde the Musical cast members and dance captains, meaning they're responsible for maintaining the accuracy of the choreography throughout the show's run. The ladies do some different types of dance practice, including practicing lifts, practicing doing cheer routines that Elle and backup dancers do during the musical. And they also practice tap dancing, which Elle has to perform at one point. Rusty and Michelle choose no one as the standout performer and kind of the winner of the workshop pseudo challenge. Haley says, actually, never mind, there is no standout performer. Because they're all standout performers. And they all have a big surprise for them waiting back at the hotel, which for some reason they're now calling a loft. The surprise is a nice dinner for the top 4, and at the end of this dinner, they are all also gifted a Tiffany Elle Woods necklace that matches the same one that Reese Witherspoon wears in the movie, and we see her putting on when we first are revealed to her character at the beginning of the film. During the dinner, the girls chat a little bit about their backgrounds and their dreams of wanting to perform, and this is also where we get a little more of jaded Autumn characterization, unfairly. Autumn is frustrated because all the other ladies are much younger, and she had the same dreams at her age, and she kind of uses this opportunity to bring some reality to them. For the audition, the ladies learn that they will be performing the song What You Want, which is what Elle performs in the musical to represent the video submission essay that she sends in for her application to Harvard. The number has a good amount of singing, a lot of dancing, a costume quick change, a tap section. It's got everything, and it's high intensity, and you got to get through it all. To support them in their performance is some of the current cast of Legally Blonde the musical, who Dennis brings in as a surprise. And each of the ladies get a whole chance during rehearsal to do the entire routine all the way through, so they can lock it in before they actually have to go do it for the audition. During this last rehearsal, Autumn says Bailey's dancing is perfect, but her singing and acting are not as good. And she also says Lauren has some growing up she needs to do. And Autumn herself, since she struggles so much with the tap dancing, is considering just kind of faking that section, just kind of shimmying and moving her legs. We shall see how that goes. At the audition, Rhiannon goes first. She has an odd start, but a great dancing section, but then very weak vocals at the end. They loved her enthusiasm, but Bernie noted that it sounded pretty weak. She's, running out of air, and he's unsure of her stamina. For Bailey, her quick change gets messed up because she had Lauren's hat, which is a little bit bigger than what would fit on Bailey's head properly. But she keeps going, and she performs with the big hat on, which comes out to her favor because it turns into a little bit of comedy that she can play off of, makes it endearing to the judges. Lauren was honestly just great. No notes. Lauren did a good job. Autumn does really well, and she's really proud of herself. And Bernie says she has moments where she is Elle all the way. But for other moments, he's nervous for her. He's not always sure. In deliberation, this is where we get the first mention of wanting to Frankenstein the contestants together. Heather would love to just make one woman that has Rhiannon's comedy sense, Bailey's professionalism, Lauren's freshness, remember she's the youngest, and Autumn's voice and talent. Although at one point during the deliberation, they also say it's clear that Rhiannon can't sing. And they say the hat fiasco to Bailey was to her benefit, but she won't always have a hat falling in her eyes to be endearing. And they question if Autumn is truly a leading lady, or is she just great? The results from the judging end up with no names on the list. Everyone is going to the casting office. So, one first thing to note, they made these 4 ladies all look exactly the same in this last elimination. They put them in the tangerine loungewear with the pink shirt, and then they all have the blonde hair. They do just look identical. It's very Stepford Wives. The judges end up cutting Lauren. They say her voice is Broadway ready, but her youth really showed today in her performance, and they were questioning if Lauren is old enough to play Elle Woods properly. Lauren's 18. Elle Woods is 22, 23 in the story. And they were questioning that. And then they find out there's more bad news. Jerry Mitchell, you remember Jerry, right? The director of Legally Blonde the musical. He showed up in the first episode and then dipped because he had previous engagements with Bravo to do that dancing show. He only wants 2 girls in the final audition. So at the start of episode 8, we pick up where we left off, and we have to send someone else home. The judges choose to eliminate Rhiannon, mostly attributing this cut to the concerns about her voice. So our final 2 competitors are Autumn and Bailey. They get the final call sheet. They are summoned to the Palace Theater. We get some nice, heartwarming footage of them walking through the theater underside, seeing Laura Bell Bundy's dressing room, and then finally emerging onto the stage of the theater and seeing the house and all the lights, and our camera is right behind them, so we're really getting to see like their POV and how grand and exciting it is. They have the final audition rehearsal, where both of the ladies will be performing Oh My God, You Guys, Positive, and So Much Better, pieces they've done before, all from Act 1, but this time they'll be performing with full sets, supporting cast, and live orchestra. Jerry Mitchell will be joining for the final audition, and he will be the one to make the final judgment. He'll, of course, take the considerations from the judges into account, but it is his call who gets to be the leading lady for his musical. And we get to watch them rehearse. Some highs and lows. We get to see confidence. We get to see uneasiness for certain parts. Both of them, of course, have things that they're very strong with, and both of them have things that they still need to work on. For the final audition day is a very last sweet little moment. They brought in the family members of Autumn and Bailey so they can watch this final audition, and of course, Autumn and Bailey themselves can have a moment with their family right before they go and do this final challenge head-to-head. So, they do Oh My God, You Guys first. They have Bailey perform first, followed by Autumn. And you can tell, like, these two are, like, definitely the top two of this entire group in this competition. They're, like, the cream of the crop of this set of women who went down this journey. To the point, like, Jerry Mitchell, who hasn't really seen them perform that much, although I did find out later on, I found out in my research that Jerry came in and kind of did some mentoring with the top 5, I believe. He hasn't seen all their performances, but his eyes are like lighting up for Bailey and Autumn. He's smiling, he's grinning. For Positive, this is where we start to see a little bit of cracks in the facade. Autumn mixed up some of the words at the start, and she wasn't quite hitting her dance steps exactly. And Bailey says she sounded a little off near the end of that piece, or that number. For So Much Better, the judges gave Autumn a great remark about sounding really good during the performance, and then Bailey just got tons and tons of compliments. So it really did feel like they put them like neck to neck, and if you're just watching, you're like, hard to tell who it's actually going to be. When they both finish, the women receive comments from the judges, starting with Jerry, and he really says, there were moments that were brilliant, and other times that these ladies were not so much brilliant. And he caps it off with saying, neither of you are there yet. Which, honestly, love the, dose of realism that he delivered to them there. He comments, Bailey has a bad habit of looking at the audience rather than her scene partners. And Jerry says that Autumn has one of the best voices he's heard, but he's not sure about how she characterizes Elle Woods. Bailey's voice is amazing, but not as good as Autumn's. And Bailey's dancing is better than Autumn's. And Jerry, similar to how Heather said in the previous episode, would really love to just push these two women into one person and have that be the next Elle Woods. We get our final results. Haley Duff shows back up again to deliver this. She is the host of the show, after all. And she said, wow, this is so exciting. The moment of truth. She does sound a little bored when she delivers it. She has the final list. She announced that Bailey is the winner. She is going to be Elle Woods on Broadway. They let her do an encore performance of So Much Better, during which all of the other contestants are Elle's sort of backup chorus above the walls during the final performance, which is also very cute. And Bailey's debut on Broadway as Elle Woods was July 23rd, 2008. And she maintained that role through October, I believe, when the show closed. So that was Legally Blonde, the musical, the search for Elle Woods. As I mentioned at the start, you can watch this yourself on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description/show notes. There'll also be links to the Playbill.com oral history of the show, as well as a link to that reunion that I mentioned, which you can find on YouTube. Which, if you're a buff who loves to learn about a lot of the behind the scenes of the show and how these things get made and the real experiences and what didn't get shown through the editing and on cameras, then you should read the Playbill oral history and watch the reunion. It's a great time. Some things that I find interesting about this show, obviously it's a reality TV competition. Fit that genre pretty well. That's what it was like primarily edited for. MTV knew what they were doing. They knew how to make this engaging and entertaining. They knew how to stitch together things the ladies had said and how to make them look like they're struggling when maybe they're not. Produce conflict when there isn't any. Although, as we saw, it wasn't always successful, such as when they tried to do that survey and the ladies said, no, we're not going to do that. Wildly different, though, than most, the final prize here being a Broadway role. This isn't just a show to just do a movie or be a model afterwards, right? This is a commitment to taking over the lead role, doing 8 shows a week for the whole remainder of the run of the show, in this case for like 2 or 3 months, which is a lot different than other, reality talent search competition shows. And I think it's also, one of the most important pieces, is it entertaining? I definitely had a good time watching it. I do think it's entertaining as a talent search reality competition series. I think it hits all the notes that you expect. However, the show also, I'd like to argue, serves as a documentary style show, because if you kind of take out the reality TV competition elements themselves, we're just watching a series of women do progressively more difficult auditions and going to workshops to hone their skills so that they can do a final audition to try to get cast as Elle Woods. And we're kind of just watching them in the progress of doing that. It just so happens that some of their things that happened during the auditions were produced and manipulated by producers for a reality show. And some of the things I had them do for what they have to participate in are very, very reality TV show flavor. And then of course there's elements that would never happen in a true audition process, right? You're not going to make all these people who are auditioning live together. You're not going to take away all of their technology and their phones and their media and connection to the outside world the whole time and make it so the only people they have to interact with are the other competitors and then the story-laden producers and the people who do the interviews in the confessionals. I do think it technically serves as a documentary show to document the process of the Legally Blonde the musical production team to select a new lead to play Elle Woods. I mean, your judges were a casting director, one of the writers of the book for the musical, and then one of the current actors in the musical, and then ultimately the director of the musical. So even though it's, we're going to classify it as a competition, I definitely think it served as a documentary. And I was entertained, but I would change some things, especially if I were to try to make this kind of show again today. Like, say we're going to do a revival of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, right? Or even a revival of Legally Blonde. I definitely think you could still do another reality show competition or a documentary to follow the casting of the lead role. I just think in following in the spirit of, again, Elle Woods and what Broadway stands for and the musical and its themes, just make it more positive. Recently, there's been a show that's been very successful at being a wholesome and positive reality competition casting show, or casting competition, Finding Mr. Christmas from Hallmark, which I've talked about before. You can go listen to my episode on that, season 1 of that show. In that show, it's a competition, but everything is just like positive. Anything that's negative is mostly just like the competitors recognizing when they didn't do as well as they wanted to do. But then everyone else who's in the competition is usually there to like uplift them and support them and help them be confident again. And I feel like you just take that angle and that fixes a lot of the problems that not only did the cast have with making the show and then watching it later to see how they were edited, but also the kind of weird vibes you get when you do watch it, when you're kind of like, why are the ladies doing this? Why are they dancing on the cobblestone street in Brooklyn in pink go-go heels? So, and as part of the purpose of this show as well, it would still very effectively serve as an advertisement for the show, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. MTV, in part, made the show because of the success of broadcasting a recording of the stage musical in 2007. That worked really well for them. It also, made Broadway performance much more accessible to a wider audience by putting it on TV. And that kind of success led in part to the creation of this show alongside the need to find a new Elle Woods. And these two sort of needs came together to create this. And throughout the show, there's so much advertising it. The current cast is wearing the merch for the show. They're constantly talking about it. They're constantly name dropping, right? Legally Blonde the musical, Elle Woods, all these things. Every time the ladies are shown the number they'll be performing or the scene they'll be doing for their audition in the second half of each episode, they and us, the audience, are always shown a clip from the recording that was put on MTV. So you're seeing actual footage from that as well. Then additionally, every single episode included not only the people who help make the show, right, the choreographers, Seth is the vocal coach, we have our associate directors and whatnot, but also people who are performing in the cast. Not just the judge, Paul, but other members, right? Kate Schindel, we had Nikki Snelson, right? Every time they came on, they got to shout out that performer and their career, but also their role in the show, and then again, they would show some footage of them in the show, which is all just one big, like, advertisement. I think you could still do that, and it would be very effective for keeping that piece in, which is, I think, how you would sell, like, a more positive spin of this type of format to MTV or whoever today. And then lastly, one of the things that I found remarkably interesting when I very first started watching the show, and something I picked up on immediately from the get-go, episode 1, was this is a very interesting example of getting Broadway people, theater people, and reality people, reality TV people together to try to make a shared collaborative project. And in some cases it really worked out, and you can tell that the work and the effort put in by especially the reality TV side really paid off. And other times it did not, right? Anytime they tried to manufacture conflict, the ladies who were in the show really just didn't let that happen. Great for them. But, there's interesting, new things that also happened because of this. In the second episode, Paul, he says this is a very unique setting. Often actors don't get a job when they audition, and they never hear why. But in this case, these ladies who are competing will know why, or at least they're told whichever reasons the judges give them, right? And I find it interesting that I would say was, along with the filming schedule and having to do everything back to back to back to back, this is of course one of those shows where they have everyone say this week, but these events are happening every single day, not a week apart. I'm not a performer. I've never been on Broadway, but I would, guess potentially that getting that feedback could be one of the more difficult parts for the people who came from the Broadway side. You're used to auditioning, and then if you don't get advanced, you leave and you move on to the next casting. But then here, you kind of have to sit with everything and keep going. And if you do poorly, but not so poorly that you're the one eliminated, you're kind of still strung along for a bit. And you can kind of fall into that trap that happens with these reality competition shows where if you're just average, if you're kind of coasting along, not in the top, not in the bottom, not being specifically noticed, as soon as the people who are not as talented as you are eliminated and you are at the bottom of the pyramid, essentially, as soon as you have one slip up, you're being eliminated over someone who has been more memorable and has been giving better TV. I unfortunately think that's what happened to Natalie. Because Natalie did a great job. She had 2 wins in a row, and then her first time in the bottom, she's gone. So things like that are just that's not how Broadway works. And you can tell in the oral history, you can tell in a reunion, and sometimes some of the reactions that were given in the confessional that they left in, that these ladies are having to kind of adapt to that in real time, but still trying to hold on to no, this is how Broadway is supposed to work. Which, if you go back and watch these, watch it with that in mind, and you'll start noticing a lot more things that you're kind of oh, that's strange that they said that or left that in. And I will say, usually when you pick up on that, and this carries for other reality shows as well, that's kind of when you know that some weird shit is going on with the editing side. That's all I have to say about Legally Blonde, the musical, the search for Elle Woods. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the recap episode. Please, it would help me out and the podcast out if you will like, rate, share, and follow the podcast on your preferred listening platform. You can also then follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at The Recap Episode and YouTube at The Recap Episode Pod, where I put out updates and also other fun content. With all that, it's time for me to go study so I can get that 179 on my LSATs.